All right, welcome to the start of a new week here on the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's Monday, it's the morning, and that means it's time for the Morning Pitt. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel with that button right there below. Click the like as well. Like and subscribe, that's what good YouTubers always say, and I'm trying my darndest to be a good YouTuber. So like and subscribe to these videos to never miss any of our daily morning pits. We put them out every morning, Monday through Friday. Just a little something to get you going in the morning, something to think about, some Pitt talking points as you head into the day, as you head into the week right now. And then, of course, if you are subscribed to our YouTube channel, you turn on notifications, you'll never miss any of our live streams. We go live every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. We go live after every game for a live stream, a live chat, basically. And if you want to make sure you don't miss any of those, like I say, subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Turn on the notifications, and you'll get an alert sent to your phone whenever we go live, so you will not miss it. This past week, I thought we were going to start the post-game show around 10 after the game against Syracuse, but it ended up going a little bit quicker than I expected, so we started around 9. Well, if you were counting on 10 all week, and you tuned in at 10 o'clock, you missed the show. But if you subscribe to our YouTube channel and have your notifications turned on, you would have gotten an alert that said, hey, Panther-Lair's going live at 9 o'clock or 9:30 or whatever time we did it. I think it was 9 o'clock. And so you didn't miss it. You knew right when we were going live. So make sure you do that. Like and subscribe right now. Of course, Pitt coming off a win over the weekend, 19-9 victory against Syracuse. Not exactly an overwhelming offensive performance, but a win nonetheless. And we talked a lot after the game about what that game was, about what it looked like, what it meant. Certainly have written a lot already on Panther-Lair.com. Going to continue to write a lot and continue to talk a lot about that game and what it means for Pitt heading into these final 3 games of the season. And this is one of the biggest things I'm thinking right now. You know, kind of each week coming out of the games, I've had sort of some big thoughts that kind of dominated my thinking over the course of the week. After the Louisville game, after the North Carolina game, and there was certainly overlap between those 2 weeks, but had something kind of on my mind each of those weeks. And the thing that I'm really kind of stuck on right now is we're 9 games into the season. 9 games down, Pitt sitting at 5-4. We know the record. They're 2-3 in the ACC. And 3 games left to play in the regular season. And we're well past the point, and I think I've actually said this a couple times in the last week or two, we're well past the point of wondering about sample size. I think we know who this Pitt team is. I really don't think there are any misunderstandings at this point. I mean, I think we've seen them play against a variety of teams of different levels of competition. Some teams that were better on offense than defense, vice versa. Some teams that were pretty good and some teams that weren't. And Pitt beat some of those teams, and they lost to a bunch of those teams as well. And at this point, I think we have a pretty clear idea of who the 2022 University of Pittsburgh football Panthers are. I think we know. I don't think there are really too many surprises left. I can't rule out at some point in the next 3 games, boy, they just have one game where the offense just clicks and looks great. But the likelihood of that happening 3 weeks in a row or 4 games in a row, if you include the bowl game, is pretty low. It's pretty unlikely. I think when you get 9 games into the season, you know who a team is, and you know pretty much what you're going to get. You have a pretty good idea. The question becomes whether what they do and who they are is good enough to win a game, or games, plural. And as you head into this final 3-game stretch, at Virginia this coming week, home against Duke, and then the regular season finale at Miami, you're finding yourself asking, or I'm finding myself asking the question, can they win games the way they're built to play? And built is maybe not the right word, but can they win games as they are right now? Because what you saw on Saturday is pretty much how it's going to have to be. They're going to have to play good to great defense, and you're going to have to run the ball. You can't rely on the and then get a few plays out of the passing game. You know what I mean? Late in the first half, Keaton Slovis and Jared Wayne connect for a couple 20-yard passes. You know, the touchdown drive, the Sebo Flemister touchdown drive, they get a 23-yard pass to the 1-yard line. You have to, you know, you're going to have a few of those plays. You know, you're going to have to connect on a few of those every now and then. But by and large, your offense is going to be based on the run, and your chances of success are going to be based on the defense. And the games when, the games they've lost, particularly the last 3 losses, were pretty much a result of the defense not being able to play close, like near perfect. You know what I mean? Georgia Tech, they end up giving up, one key touchdown. Louisville, they give up a trick play. Carolina, they do a pretty good job against that offense and then fall apart in the fourth quarter and give up 3 touchdowns. The Syracuse game, it's a 1-score game in the fourth quarter. You know what I mean? It's down to the wire as a 1-score game. Pitt was leading, 17. The Sebo Flemister score that made it 17-6, and then they gave up a field goal with about 5 minutes to go in the game that made it a 1-score game. And so the defense had to hold on. You know what I mean? The defense had to force a field goal in that situation. The defense had to make another stop after Pitt's final offensive possession. The defense had to play near perfect, and they did against Syracuse. They didn't give up a touchdown. They only gave up 3 field goals. That's a near perfect game. And you look at the total offensive production, you give up 100 and what did it end up being? 145 yards of offense. You hold them to 25 yards rushing in the game. 3 of 14 on third down. I mean, it was a dominant defensive performance. It was a great defensive performance. And unfortunately, it's probably what they're going to have to do if they want to have a chance to win some, or all of these final 3 games in the regular season. It's just who they are. And there's that old saying of when someone tells you who they are, believe them. I mean, this team has shown us for 9 games who they are. And we should believe them. I was looking over, the 9 games, how many touchdowns they've scored in those 9 games. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the 9 games, they've scored 3 or fewer touchdowns. I mean, that's just... In college football in 2022, if you score 3 or fewer touchdowns, you're not going to win many games. In the last 3 games, they've scored a grand total of 6 touchdowns. And they lost the first one when they only scored 1 touchdown. They lost the next one when they scored 3 touchdowns. And they won this last one where they scored 2 touchdowns. You're not going to win many games scoring 2 touchdowns. It's just not viable. And you can say, well, they had another chance. They would have gotten another touchdown if Jared Wayne doesn't throw an interception. I mean, you can this or that, but you need to be able to score. You need to put yourself in position to score more than 2 touchdowns. You need to score 4 or 5 touchdowns to have a realistic chance week in, week out. But that's not who this team is. 6 out of 9 games, they've scored 3 or fewer touchdowns. That's who they are. They're a 21-point offense on their good days. On their good days. And on their bad days, they're a 1-touchdown offense like the Louisville game, or a 2-touchdown offense like the Syracuse game. Pretty good defenses they were facing, but that's who their offense is. And so you ask the question, can they win these final 3 games playing that style of football? And it's not even a choice at this point. I mean, that's just what they're capable of. Is running the ball, making a couple of plays in the passing game, and playing really good defense. And of course, the problem with that is you only need 1 defensive mistake, 1 defensive slip up, and you put the game in jeopardy. You require the defense to play near perfect. And we talked about that early in the season. I think if you go back and look at some of the early Morning Pitt episodes, there was one where I talked about the slim margin for error, or small room for error for Pitt's defense and special teams. That a bad special teams penalty, a mistake on defense can turn the tide of a game and ultimately cost a win, cost a victory, because of how unproductive the offense is. But that's who they are. That's who they are. And we've spent so much time talking about whose fault it is. We spent so much time talking about how you fix it, how you change it. I mean, at this point, you make as many tweaks as you can. You try to find answers, but we know who they are. We've seen it now. So what can they do in these final 3 games? Realistically, playing that style is going to give you a chance in at least 2 out of those 3 games. I mean, Virginia, their offense actually is less productive than Pitt. They're only averaging 18 points per game or something like that. They're one of the worst offenses in the ACC right now. They're actually next to last in scoring. and Miami is sort of the same way, particularly with Tyler Van Dyke being hurt. Miami scored 3 points against Florida State over the weekend. And that was with Van Dyke playing for a little bit, and then he got hurt again. And so you wonder, with these injury issues on and off for Tyler Van Dyke, the Miami quarterback, you wonder if we're coming close to the point where he ends up just shutting it down or being shut down. In which case, that offense looks very punchless without him, and they struggled with him this season. So those two games, maybe you've got a possibility, because you're really sort of gauging the opposing offense. Which offense is, you need to find offenses that are as unproductive as yours, so your defense has a chance to hold them to like 12 points or something and give you a chance to win. I mean, that's sort of the world that Pitt is living in right now. And so Virginia's offense, it looks like they might actually be able to do that. Miami's offense might be susceptible to that as well. Duke, not so much. Duke in the last 3 games has put up 118 points. They lost one of those games, but they put up 118 points. They're averaging 34 points per game. And don't look at the score from Friday night and say, well, they only beat Boston College by a touchdown. That was like a 2-score game until the final 17 seconds or so when Boston College kicked a field goal to make it 7 points. I mean, they were more or less in control of Duke. Duke was more or less in control of Boston College. They're running the ball well. They're averaging more than 200 rushing yards per game. That's an offense that looks like it can score. That's an offense that looks like it can move the ball. And that's a problem for Pitt. Because I don't know if Duke's defense looks susceptible enough to give up a bunch of points or yards to Pitt's offense. Carolina was supposed to be the one where that could happen, and even that didn't really work out. Pitt scored 21 or something, or 20, even that didn't work out. And so you need that combination. You need your defense to play a great game if you're going to have a chance to win. And it's anyone's guess how well they're going to be able to play over the final 3 games. I do think this is a pretty good defense. And I say this even before their dominant performance against Syracuse. I think they've played pretty well all year. They've been susceptible to giving up pass plays like they always have been. There's nothing new there, but they've played pretty well all year. They had, prior to this past weekend, the best anyone has played against Tennessee all season, which was the number 1 offense in the country. Carolina, I thought they did a good job through 3 quarters, and then it just kind of fell apart in the 4th quarter. But they really haven't gotten beat too badly, save for like one drive here or one drive there. But when your offense is playing so poorly, one drive here or one drive there can be, can sink the whole game for you. But I think the defensive line did a good job on Saturday getting pressure on Syracuse. I mean, look, Carlos Del Rio Wilson is a guy who can get out and run. He can move. You saw him scramble on 3rd down for 15 yards late in the 4th quarter. So, that's the kind of player he is, and they still got to him and sacked him 6 times. They were getting pressure with the D-line. They got pressure with their blitz packages. Solomon DeShields got another sack. He's got 4 now, largely rushing the passer out of the Delta defensive package. I think the linebackers as a whole are coming along. Gervasio Dennis continues to play really well. I think the outside linebackers are developing nicely. That progress that you were hoping to see is coming, as the season goes on. Now, 3 quarters of the way through the season, I think you're seeing some of those steps forward. And I think the secondary has been pretty solid overall. I don't get hung up on saying, A.J. Woods got beat here, or M.J. Devonshire got beat there. The reality is, that's just sort of, that's part of the deal with this defensive system. And we should know this by now. It's year 8, 3 quarters of the way through year 8. We should know that that's going to happen sometimes with this defensive system. It's what happens. But I think seeing the pressure the defensive line was able to get and seeing the improved play of the linebackers is encouraging and should give Pitt a good chance against Virginia and a good chance against Miami. And we'll see what happens against Duke. So I like how Pitt's defense is playing. They had a goal line stand. I kind of keep forgetting about this. I meant to talk about it on Saturday. I didn't really get a chance to, but big time goal line stand to force a field goal in that game against Syracuse, and just overall a good performance against a backup quarterback. But it was a good performance against an offense that has been sort of resurgent this season under a new offensive coordinator and a new quarterback's coach. And so, if you get that kind of performance, they're going to have a really good chance against Virginia and probably Miami. And then, they'll have some kind of chance against Duke. We'll see. But I think, I think we all have sort of a realistic cap on what we expect out of this offense at this point. And maybe I'll spend all week this week talking about how there's that realistic cap on the offense and they're really just not going to get any better than what we've seen. And maybe they'll break out and score like 40 at Virginia. I think it's unlikely. I think they're going to keep running the ball. I think they're going to try and win time of possession. And at this point, I'm not sure if it's a philosophical decision as much as it's just a practical decision. This is just what they can do. And right now, you're trying to take any win you can get by any means necessary. And if that means you have to lean into, some of the few things you do really well, and then lean into it and try to win games that way. It's what it's going to have to be. It's what it's been for most of this season, and for this final, these final 3 games of the regular season, 4 counting the Syracuse game. It's what it's going to have to be. You're going to have to lean into that style and that approach, and either win with it or lose with it. So we'll see. We definitely have a lot of time this week to talk about this Pitt-Virginia matchup. We have a lot of time to talk about what we expect on Saturday as the Panthers go to Charlottesville. But we have to switch gears here because tonight, your University of Pittsburgh basketball Panthers open their 2022-2023 season with a home game against Tennessee Martin at the Peterson Event Center. And I figured we couldn't get out of this Monday edition of the Morning Pitt without talking basketball since they're starting the season tonight. And I've talked at different points, probably in the last week or two about what we expect for this team. I'm not going to give you my season prediction here. You're going to have to wait until a little bit later in the day on Panther-Lair.com. We'll have all our staff picks where we make season predictions and bold predictions and all those things. I'm not going to give you my season prediction here, but I do think this team might have the best chance of any Jeff Capel team to finish with more wins than losses this season. I think it's really possible. Maybe not by a lot, but I think it's really possible. I'm just so intrigued by the makeup of this team. There might not be sort of a potential superstar guard like they have with Xavier Johnson or even Trey McGowan. It's not like that. They do have a potential superstar center, I think, in John Hughley. When he finally gets back and gets up to speed, I think he should be one of the best players in the ACC. A postseason all-conference recognition should be in order for him, even if it's second team or something like that. But I think he'll be really good. I don't know when. I don't know when he's going to come back and start playing again. It might be a little while. He's not going to be ready for tonight's game. Jeff Capel already said that. He said he hopes to have an update after this game on Hughley's future availability and when he will be able to join the team on the court. And then I imagine once he does, it's gonna take a little time for him to get, like I say, up to speed. But once he gets going, I think he'll be really good. I think he's got a chance to, be one of the better players in the ACC. What intrigues me about this team is the makeup and the way it's built and how it's different from what we've seen from previous Capel teams. And it starts with the veteran guards. It starts with Nelly Cummings, the transfer from Colgate. It starts with Jamarius Burton, who's returning. It starts with Nike Sabandi and Greg Elliott. These are veteran guys, fifth and sixth year players with the type of experience that Pitt's backcourt has not had under Jeff Capel. He has not had a backcourt that's experienced like this. He's had backcourts that are more explosive or backcourts that could do this or backcourts that could do that. But he has not had a backcourt with this level of veteran leadership. And maybe that's an element that's been missing from this team. Maybe they've just lacked for veteran leadership. And they have. I mean, you can run, probably Jared Wilson-Frame was the last sort of real senior leader that they had on this team. And now I think they've got a chance to have a number of voices at the guard position in the backcourt who can, like I say, sort of take leadership positions with this team. Be that calming voice. Be that stern voice. Be that voice who rallies everyone together. And I really think that's what Capel is expecting and hoping for out of Nelly Cummings. Cummings has a lot of experience. He's played in the NCAA tournament. He's played against, high major programs. Even when he was at Colgate, his stat line from his time at Colgate against high major programs is really good. He produced when he was on that big stage, including against Pitt. And now he's got an opportunity to play at this level night in, night out. And I think he's excited for that. He's a veteran guy. He's been around a long time. He's played a lot of basketball. And he's going to bring that to Pitt. And I think it's I think it's a bonus. Like I say, it's something they haven't really had. And you add in Jamarius Burton, and you add in Nike Sabandy, and you add in Greg Elliott. You've got these 4 guys who have just played a lot of college basketball together. Or not together. I shouldn't. They haven't played any college basketball together. You've got 4 guys who have played a lot of college basketball. And that's really intriguing to me. Of course, the other element that's really intriguing, and you probably know what it is before I even say it, is the shooting. This team should be able to shoot better than any other team that Capel has had, and that is huge. There was no deterrent last year to keep teams from doubling John Hughley in the post. When John Hughley got the ball, opponents had every reason to just collapse on him with as many guys as possible, because why wouldn't you? What are you worried about outside the three-point line? There was no real threat. Mo Gee was the biggest threat. Well, this year you've got Blake Hinson outside. He shot 5 of 8 against Edinburgh in that final preseason game. And while I don't know if he's going to shoot 5 of 8 every night, he's like a 33% career three-point shooter with volume. So he's capable of making them, and he's not afraid to take them. And then you've got Greg Elliott, who is a really good three-point shooter at Marquette. And then you could bring Nate Santos off the bench, and he's a really good three-point shooter. I think he could take a step forward as a sophomore this year. And then even Cummings and Burton and really even Sabandy, they're not afraid to take those shots. And sometimes just the threat of guys attempting three-point shots can accomplish the goal. Because when you look at Pitt's stats from last season, not only were they one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the ACC, I think they were next to last in three-point shooting percentage, they were dead last in three-pointers attempted. They didn't even take the shots. There was no threat. There was no reason to close out. There was no reason to get out to the three-point line because nobody was even going to shoot the ball from out there. If somebody got the ball outside the arc, you could just let them stay out there and stay a step closer to Hughley and a step further away from the line because you weren't worried about that. Now, if the ball goes out to Elliott or the ball goes out to Hinson or the ball goes out to Santos or really even if the ball goes out to Cummings or Burton, you need to close out. You need to close out because those guys are likely to pull the trigger. And if you don't get to Elliott on time, and if you don't get to Hinson quick enough, and if you don't get to Santos quick enough, not only are they going to pull the trigger, but there's a not better than even, but there's a decent chance of ball going into the basket. There are legitimate shooting threats on this team, which has not been the case in the past. Maybe since Jared Wilson Frame? Yeah, I mean, like, who was the last three-point shooting threat, legitimate three-point shooting threat that this team had? Ethiel Horton was supposed to be that. For some reason, he got in his head that he needed to drive. He needed to be a guy who could go to the basket as opposed to just standing out there catching and shooting all the time, which would have provided a much-needed threat to offset all the attention that was spent on John Hughley. They haven't had this kind of team before. And I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know if it's good enough to to win in the ACC. I don't know if it's good enough to win more than they lose, even though that's what I'm predicting. But what I do know is that they haven't had a team like this. And that alone, for me, is enough to make it intriguing. I don't know how good they're going to be, but it's at least a different approach. We've seen Capel try certain approaches over the years. I think you can look over his first 4 years and find different things that, say, oh, he tried this, or oh, he tried that, or this year they were trying to do this, or this year they were trying to do that. Well, now, this is what they're trying. Veteran guards, team still built around Hughley, but with outside shooting to draw some of the attention away from him. Maybe it'll work. Of course, they have to get through who knows how many games without Hughley. And that's going to put some pressure on Federico to play down there. That's going to, allow defenses not to focus as much on defending the center position. But as Jeff Capel said, ideally that'll make the team even better and more dangerous through all this time they get without Hughley to make them more dangerous when Hughley does return. I don't know. I don't know what this team is going to do. I don't know what they're going to be. I'm intrigued to see it though. And you know what? They were fun to watch in the exhibition games. You're not going to take a lot away from 50-point wins over Clarion and Edinburgh, but they were fun to watch and they looked like they were having fun out on the court, which if you've watched over the last 4 years, 6 years, really, that hasn't always been the case, that they look like they're having fun out there. But they do look like they're having fun. They enjoy playing together. And again, I think they've got some leadership on this team that maybe they didn't have in the past. Now, is that going to be good enough to beat Michigan, to beat, certainly anybody in the ACC? Is it going to be good enough to beat West Virginia or Northwestern, even if those teams aren't expected to be very good? I don't know. But like I say, it's at least something different. Trying something different, trying a different approach. And this team was built in a very specific way to, to take that other approach, to take this different approach of the veteran guards, the shooting, and Hughley. So we'll see how it goes, but it all starts tonight with Pitt hosting Tennessee Martin. We're going to get into this sweet spot here where we get about 3 weeks or so of regular season football and regular season basketball at the same time. And this is going to be fun. We're going to have a lot to talk about right here on the Morning Pitt. So make sure you subscribe, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Like this video as well. And then head over and check out Panther-Lair.com. It's Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. The most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. We cover it all at Panther-Lair.com and message boards where you can talk with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans all day, every day. Panther-Lair.com. Got a big week of Morning Pits coming up. We'll talk football, of course, throughout the week. We will talk basketball heading into the backyard backyard basketball, whatever we call it, on Friday night against West Virginia. And then the 10th game of the season, Pitt at Virginia on Saturday. So we got a lot to do. We got a lot to talk about. It's going to be an exciting week here on the Morning Pit, so make sure you stay tuned. I hope you're enjoying this beautiful weather. I hope you had a great weekend. Enjoy your Monday, and we will talk to you tomorrow morning for the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.